The door crashed against the wall as Nikolai burst into the kitchen, his mother's back to him as she methodically chopped vegetables. "You knew," he said, voice trembling. "All this time, you knew what he was doing." His mother's knife stilled, but she didn't turn. "What are you talking about?" "Don't..." Nikolai slammed his palm on the counter. "I found the letters, the ones you hid from Dad about Elena's bruises, the concerned neighbors. You protected him for 20 years while he..." His voice broke. She finally faced him, her eyes hard yet glistening. "Your father provides for this family. What was I supposed to do? Tell the truth. Help her." Nikolai's voice rose to a shout, the veins in his neck standing out. "My own sister, Mom. How could you let this happen?" His mother's face transformed, a cold mask sliding into place. "Family protects family, Nikolai. Something you clearly don't understand." "No," Nikolai whispered, backing away. "Family doesn't destroy each other. I'm going to the police tomorrow, with or without you." The silence between them stretched, electric with decades of secrets finally exposed to harsh light. Welcome back to Hidden Truths, everyone. For those joining us for the first time, you've just witnessed the moment that changed everything for the Volkov family. I'm Alex Mercer, and this channel is dedicated to bringing you the most compelling stories of moral dilemmas that tear families apart. Tonight's episode, Blood Loyalty, takes us into the heart of a family where secrets have festered for generations. We'll explore how Nikolai Volkov, a man who believed in the sanctity of his family, discovered the horrifying truth behind closed doors. What would you do if protecting someone you love meant betraying another? This question haunts our story tonight as we follow Nikolai's journey from devoted son to reluctant whistleblower. To our loyal viewers who've been with us through our previous investigations, thank you for your continued support. Your comments on our last episode about the Morrison case help shape how we approach this even more complex story. Before we continue with Nikolai's story, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Each week we bring you stories that challenge conventional thinking about family, loyalty, and justice. Stories that might even change how you view your own relationships. Leave a comment below sharing what you would do in Nikolai's position. Would you protect the family name or stand up for the victim? Your perspectives help fuel our discussions and often guide our future episodes. The evidence Nikolai discovered that night wasn't just paperwork. It was the collapsed foundation of everything he believed about his childhood. Each document revealed a new layer of complicity, a web of silence that had protected his father while endangering his sister Elena. But the true shock wasn't what his father had done. It was discovering that his mother, the woman who had taught him about right and wrong, had chosen family reputation over her daughter's safety for 2 decades. Their professional success stood in stark contrast to their personal struggle that began in their 3rd year of marriage. Having decided they were ready to start a family, they approached parenthood with the same methodical planning they applied to their careers. They scheduled health checkups, tracked ovulation cycles, and researched childcare options near their home. After 6 months without success, they consulted with fertility specialists. Initial tests revealed no obvious issues, placing them in the frustrating category of unexplained infertility. Their doctor recommended continuing natural attempts for another 6 months before considering interventions. When those months passed without pregnancy, they began with the least invasive treatments, medicated cycles to enhance ovulation, followed by intrauterine insemination. Sophia administered her own hormone injections, her scientific background making her meticulous about dosages and timing. Nikolai rearranged his work schedule to attend every appointment, holding her hand during procedures and driving her home afterward. The first year of treatment yielded 3 promising starts, each ending before the 8-week mark. Each loss hit harder than the previous, the brief joy of positive pregnancy tests giving way to grief that seemed to physically weigh them down. "It's a numbers game," their doctor explained during their first-year review appointment. "For couples with your profile, we often see success within 3 years of treatment." They moved on to more aggressive approaches, multiple rounds of IVF, experimental protocols, and second opinions from specialists across the country. Their home calendar became marked with medication schedules, procedure dates, and 2-week waiting periods that stretched like years. Year 4 of their journey brought their most promising pregnancy. After their 3rd IVF cycle, using a protocol adjusted specifically for Sophia's hormone levels, they passed the critical first trimester milestone. They cautiously began preparations, converting their home office into a nursery with pale yellow walls. At 17 weeks, they learned they were expecting a girl. Nikolai spent an entire weekend assembling a crib, refusing help because a father should build his daughter's first bed. Sophia began keeping a journal addressed to their daughter, filling it with hopes and promises. At 22 weeks during a routine checkup, the technician fell silent during the ultrasound. The stillness in the room told them everything before the doctor even arrived. Their daughter, whom they had already named May after Sophia's grandmother, had no heartbeat. The physical recovery took weeks. The emotional recovery never seemed complete. Sophia returned to work after a month, throwing herself into research with an intensity that concerned her colleagues. Nikolai expanded his business to London, flying back and forth weekly, the constant movement seeming easier than staying still with their grief. Their 5th and 6th years of trying brought 4 more early miscarriages. Medical tests multiplied, revealing a complex interplay of minor issues, slight immunological responses, marginal egg quality concerns, subtle hormonal imbalances, non-significant enough to be the clear culprit, but together creating a perfect storm of fertility challenges. The financial cost mounted alongside the emotional toll. Insurance covered only portions of their treatments, leading them to liquidate investments and take out a second mortgage. "We're investing in our family," Nikolai would say whenever Sophia expressed concern about the expenses, though both recognized the diminishing returns on that investment. By year 7, their approach shifted. They began exploring other paths to parenthood: adoption agencies, surrogacy options, even the possibility of remaining child-free. Each avenue presented its own challenges. International adoption faced increasing restrictions. Domestic adoption agencies had years-long waiting lists, and surrogacy costs exceeded even their IVF expenses. Their relationship, once defined by passionate debates and shared ambitions, now navigated through grief, disappointment, and difficult decisions. Yet something remarkable happened in this crucible of loss. Their bond deepened in unexpected ways. Nikolai, raised in a family where men rarely showed vulnerability, learned to share his pain openly with Sophia. He began attending a support group for men dealing with infertility, eventually becoming a mentor to newcomers. Sophia, who had always processed emotions internally, started a blog about their journey that connected them with others facing similar struggles. They established new rituals to honor their losses while celebrating their connection. On what would have been May's due date each year, they hiked to a secluded pond in the White Mountains where they had once vacationed, leaving wildflower seeds along the trail. On their anniversary, rather than dwelling on what they lacked, they created elaborate gratitude dinners where each course represented something they treasured about their life together. In their 8th year of trying, they made the difficult decision to stop active fertility treatments. The choice came not in a dramatic moment, but through a series of quiet conversations on their back porch, watching fireflies appear in their garden as summer evenings lengthened. "I realized something," Sophia told Nikolai on the night they finalized their decision. "For years, I've been living in a suspended state, always waiting for the next treatment, the next test, the next chance. I've been holding my breath for 8 years. Nikolai took her hand, the calluses from his weekend woodworking projects rough against her fingers. "And now? Now I want to exhale," she said. "I want to live the life we have, not just wait for the one we imagined." Their decision didn't end their desire for a family, but it changed how they defined that possibility. They remained open to adoption if the opportunity arose, but stopped centering their lives around the pursuit of parenthood. Nikolai refocused on mentoring young entrepreneurs from immigrant backgrounds. Sophia initiated a research project on treatments for childhood cancers, channeling her nurturing instincts into her scientific work. Through loss and disappointment, they discovered a resilience in their relationship that neither had anticipated. A quiet strength built not despite their challenges, but because of how they faced them together. The invitation had seemed innocent enough. Nikolai's mother, Vivienne Volkov, was visiting Boston for a medical conference, a rare trip without his father, who claimed a business emergency had kept him in Chicago. When she suggested dinner at Nikolai and Sophia's home, they agreed, seeing an opportunity to mend relationships that had grown increasingly strained. "Perhaps without your father present, we can have a more relaxed evening," Nikolai had told Sophia as they prepared the house that Saturday. Sophia had nodded, though her tightened grip on the wine glass she was polishing revealed her apprehension. Vivian arrived at precisely 7 o'clock, entering their home with the practiced assessment of someone evaluating a property. Her gaze swept across the living room, lingering on the empty spaces where toys or family photos might have been displayed in another household. "You've rearranged the furniture," she noted, handing Nikolai an expensive bottle of Cabernet. "Again." "We thought this layout opened up the space more," Sophia said, emerging from the kitchen. She wiped her hands on a cloth before embracing her mother-in-law. "It's good to see you, Vivian." Vivian returned the hug with practiced precision, neither too warm nor overtly cold. "You look tired, dear. Are those new lines around your eyes?" Nikolai intercepted with practiced ease. "Mom, let me show you what we've done with the garden while Sophia finishes in the kitchen." In the backyard, Vivian admired the raised beds of herbs and vegetables that had become Sophia's weekend project over the past year. "Gardening," she said with a slight nod. "Good therapy, I suppose. Elena should try it. She's been so restless lately, calling me at all hours with trivial concerns." Nikolai tensed at the mention of his sister but said nothing. He'd learned long ago that his mother's comments were often baited hooks, designed to pull him into debates he couldn't win. When they returned inside, Sophia had set the dining table with their best china and crystal, a wedding gift from Nikolai's parents that they rarely used. The meal began with polite conversation about Vivian's conference, Nikolai's expanding business, and Sophia's recent publication in a prestigious scientific journal. "Impressive achievements," Vivian said, delicately cutting her salmon. "Though one wonders how you find time for all this work, Sophia. In my day, career women usually chose between professional success and family." Sophia's smile remained fixed. "Fortunately, we live in times where that's not necessarily an either-or proposition." "Perhaps," Vivian replied, her tone suggesting otherwise, "though nature has its own timeline, regardless of our modern notions." The first course passed with this undercurrent of tension, like electricity humming through hidden wires. As Nikolai served the main course, lamb with rosemary and garlic that had been slow cooking all day, Vivian shifted the conversation toward family. "Your cousin Anastasia had her third child last month," she announced, examining her wine glass. "A beautiful boy. Your aunt sent photos yesterday. He has the Volkov eyes." Nikolai placed the serving dish on the table with more force than necessary. "That's wonderful news. We should send a gift." "I already sent one from all of us," Vivian replied. "I assumed you'd both be too busy with your careers to remember such things." Sophia placed her hand on Nikolai's knee beneath the table, a silent signal they'd developed over years of difficult family dinners. He took a breath and nodded. "Thank you for including us then," Sophia said. "How thoughtful. Family takes care of family," Vivian said. "Speaking of which, Elena mentioned she hasn't heard from you in months, Nikolai." "I called her for her birthday 3 weeks ago," he countered. "We spoke for an hour." "Yes, but you haven't visited Chicago in what, a year now? Your father notices these things, even if he doesn't say so." "We've been invited to Chicago 4 times in the past year," Sophia interjected gently. "Each time something came up on your end to postpone." Vivian waved this away. "Circumstances. Life gets complicated. You'll understand when you have children of your own." She paused, then added, "If that's still in your plans." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Nikolai's hand tightened around his fork. "Mom, you know that's not appropriate conversation." "What?" Vivian's expression was a study in manufactured innocence. "It's a natural question. You're both approaching 40. Most people would have given up by now if nothing was working." Sophia set down her utensils with perfect composure. "We prefer to keep certain aspects of our life private, Vivian. Even from family." "Privacy," Vivian echoed, taking a sip of wine. "Such an American concept. In Russia, family shares everything, joys and difficulties alike." "We're not in Russia," Nikolai said flatly. "Clearly not." Vivian's gaze swept around their carefully appointed dining room. "Here you have this beautiful house, successful careers, every modern convenience, yet somehow producing a child eludes you. One has to wonder why." The tension that had been building throughout the meal suddenly crystallized into something sharp and dangerous. Nikolai placed his napkin on the table and leaned forward. "That's enough, Mom. I am only expressing concern," Vivian continued, cutting her lamb with surgical precision. "I've watched you both suffer for years. As a medical professional, I can't help but wonder if you've explored all options. There are experimental treatments in Europe that... We've explored everything we wish to explore, Sophia interrupted, her voice calm but firm. Our reproductive choices are not up for committee review. Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly. Committee review? I'm your mother-in-law, Sophia. My only interest is seeing my son happy. I am happy, Nikolai said. Sophia and I have built a life we're proud of. A half-life, Vivian replied. A house without children is like a garden without flowers, technically functional but missing its purpose. Sophia placed her hands flat on the table, a gesture Nikolai recognized as her centering herself. Our home has plenty of purpose, Vivian. It's filled with love, intellectual pursuit, friendship, and community involvement. Community involvement, Vivian repeated with a small laugh. Is that what they call it now? Substitutes for real family? Mom, stop, Nikolai warned. But Vivian had reached that point in the evening, accelerated by her third glass of wine, where restraint no longer guided her words. I'm simply saying what everyone thinks, but is too polite to mention. 8 years of trying, and nothing to show for it. At some point, one must consider that perhaps this is nature's way of... Of what? Nikolai cut in, his voice dangerously quiet. Vivian met his gaze directly. Of indicating incompatibility. Perhaps Sophia's body is simply rejecting your genetic material because fundamentally you aren't meant to reproduce together. The statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sophia's face had gone completely still, her complexion pale except for 2 bright spots of color high on her cheekbones. Perhaps, Vivian continued into the silence, if you had chosen someone from a similar background. Stop talking, Nikolai's voice was barely audible. Right now, you know I'm right, Vivian pressed. The doctors won't say it because they're afraid of sounding politically incorrect, but cross-cultural genetics can sometimes... My inability to carry a pregnancy has nothing to do with my Chinese heritage, Sophia said, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. It's a complex medical situation that our doctors understand fully, even if you do not. Vivian shrugged. I'm simply offering another perspective. After all, your failure to conceive affects more than just you two. It ends the Volkov line, a family that survived revolution, war, and exile, only to be extinguished because my son chose a wife who... That's enough. Sophia stood up, placing her napkin beside her half-eaten meal. Her movements were controlled, almost elegant in their restraint. I think I need some air. Please excuse me. She walked from the room without rushing, her back straight, closing the front door behind her with a soft click that somehow echoed louder than a slam would have. In her absence, the dining room filled with a different kind of tension, a charged silence before a storm breaks. Nikolai stared at his mother, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in his adult life. Not as the matriarch who had shepherded their family through difficult times, but as someone capable of calculated cruelty. Go after her, Vivian said, reaching for her wine glass. She's being dramatic. No, Nikolai said quietly. She's protecting herself from poison. Vivian's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? 8 years, Nikolai said, his voice gathering strength. For 8 years, Sophia has endured pain you can't imagine. Physical, emotional, financial. She's been poked, prodded, and medicated until her body didn't feel like her own anymore. She's lost pregnancies, hope, and parts of herself that might never return. And through all of it, she has remained kind, resilient, and gracious, even to you. He stood up, towering over the table. And you have the audacity to call her a failure? I never used that exact word. You didn't have to. Nikolai's hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with a rage he'd never allowed himself to feel toward his mother. You've made your opinion clear from the day we got married. Nothing Sophia does will ever be good enough because she doesn't fit your narrow definition of who I should love. That's not fair, Vivian protested. I've always been welcoming. Welcoming? Nikolai laughed without humor. You welcome her the way someone tolerates a temporary inconvenience. You've been waiting for 8 years for our marriage to fail, so you could say, I told you so. Vivian's face hardened. You're being ridiculous. Family disagreements happen, but blood... Don't, Nikolai cut her off. Don't talk to me about blood. Not after what you just said about my wife. He walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave now. After Vivian departed, her exit marked by wounded dignity rather than remorse, Nikolai searched for Sophia. He found her sitting on their garden bench, wrapped in the light jacket she kept by the door. The night was cool for early autumn, the first hints of changing leaves visible in the moonlight. He sat beside her without speaking, close enough to offer warmth but not touching, allowing her the space she needed. For several minutes they watched their breath form small clouds in the chilled air. "I'm sorry," he finally said, the words inadequate but necessary. "You have nothing to apologize for," Sophia replied. "You didn't say those things, but I brought her into our home. I should have protected you better." Sophia turned to face him, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Nikolai, you can't protect me from the truth of who your mother is." Tonight wasn't an aberration. It was just the first time she said openly what she's always thought. He couldn't argue with that assessment. In retrospect, the signs had been there all along. Subtle digs about Sophia's career focus, pointed gifts of fertility books, comments about Volkov traditions that somehow excluded her. "What she said about us being incompatible," he began, "is scientifically absurd," Sophia finished. "Our fertility issues have nothing to do with our different ethnicities. That's just her racism finding a convenient target." Nikolai nodded, feeling a strange mix of grief and clarity. "I always thought that if I just tried harder, explained better, somehow she would see you the way I do. But tonight I realize she doesn't want to. Her worldview depends on maintaining these divisions." They sat in silence again, the weight of this realization settling between them. "What happens now?" Sophia finally asked. Nikolai took her hand, her fingers cold against his palm. "Now we decide what kind of family we want to be, not based on who we came from, but on who we choose to become." The decision crystallized in that moment, though its execution would require planning. For years, Nikolai had maintained contact with his family out of obligation, separating their flaws from their essential roles in his life. Tonight had shattered that compartmentalization. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to create some distance. Not just physical distance, we already have that, but emotional boundaries. Clear ones." Sophia squeezed his hand. "Are you sure? They're still your parents." "Yes," he said with newfound certainty. "And you're my family. The family I chose. It's time I honored that choice properly." As they walked back into their home together, the dining table with its abandoned meals stood as evidence of a threshold crossed. The evening had begun as a simple dinner and ended as a demarcation between their past and their future. A boundary line neither of them would cross again without significant change. 2 weeks after the disastrous dinner with Vivian, Nikolai sat in the polished conference room of Blackwell & Associates, a legal firm specializing in estate planning. The firm occupied the 23rd floor of a glass tower in downtown Boston, offering views of the harbor that Nikolai barely noticed as he reviewed the documents before him. "These changes are significant," said Miranda Blackwell, the senior partner who had handled the Volkovs' legal matters for 5 years. "Are you certain about removing your parents as beneficiaries from your primary estate?" Nikolai nodded, signing the form with deliberate strokes. "I am establishing a separate trust for them with fixed distributions. The main estate will go to Sophia, with portions allocated to the charitable foundations we discussed." Miranda made a note in her file. "And the medical directives? You previously had your mother listed as secondary decision-maker after Sophia. Remove her," Nikolai said without hesitation. "Replace her with my colleague Thomas Chen. May I ask what prompted these changes?" Miranda's tone remained professional, but her eyes showed genuine concern. She had guided them through their fertility journey's legal aspects, helping with potential surrogacy contracts and adoption applications. Nikolai placed his pen on the table. "Let's just say I've gained clarity about certain relationships. These changes reflect my priorities more accurately now." As he signed the final documents, his phone vibrated with a message from Sophia, finished at Dr. Patel's. "Something unexpected came up. Meeting you at home instead of office. Don't worry, I'm okay." He frowned at the cryptic nature of the text. Sophia had mentioned a routine follow-up appointment, part of their agreement with Dr. Patel to monitor Sophia's health after they stopped active treatments. These appointments had become less frequent, scheduled now just twice yearly. "Miranda, I need to wrap this up," he said, gathering his things. "When will these changes take effect?" "The medical directives immediately. The estate adjustments will be filed by end of week." She collected the signed documents. "We'll send final copies to your home address." Nikolai thanked her and headed to the elevator, checking his watch. It was only 2:30 p.m. Sophia wasn't expected home until after 5. Whatever had happened at Dr. Patel's office must have been significant enough to change her plans entirely. Across town, Sophia sat in her parked car outside their home, hands still gripping the steering wheel though the engine had been off for 10 minutes. She was trying to process Dr. Patel's words, which seemed to echo in her mind with surreal clarity. The appointment had begun routinely enough. Blood pressure check, weight measurement, the standard questions about her menstrual cycle, which had become irregular since they'd stopped treatments. Dr. Patel had reviewed her blood work from the previous week, making notes in her file. "Your hormone levels are showing some interesting patterns," Dr. Patel had said, looking up from her tablet. "When was your last period?" Sophia had to think. About 6 weeks ago? But that's not unusual now. They've been coming every 5 to 7 weeks since we stopped the treatments. Dr. Patel nodded. "And any unusual symptoms? Fatigue, nausea, breast tenderness?" "Some fatigue, but I assumed it was work stress. We're in final testing phases for a new compound." Sophia had paused, noting Dr. Patel's expression. "Why? What are you seeing in my blood work?" Instead of answering directly, Dr. Patel had suggested a quick ultrasound, just to check on things. "Your ovaries sometimes develop cysts after extensive hormone treatments," Sophia had agreed, changing into a gown with the practiced efficiency of someone who had undergone hundreds of these examinations. As she lay on the table, Dr. Patel applied the warm gel to her abdomen, rather than preparing for a transvaginal ultrasound. "Let's start with an abdominal view today," she had explained, pressing the wand against Sophia's lower belly. The room had fallen silent as Dr. Patel moved the wand methodically, her eyes fixed on the screen that was turned away from Sophia. After several minutes, she had adjusted the angle and looked at Sophia with an expression that combined professional calm with genuine amazement. "Sophia," she had said quietly, "you're pregnant." Now sitting in her car, Sophia replayed what had followed that impossible statement. Her immediate reaction had been disbelief. "That's not possible," she had said. "We stopped trying. We haven't done any treatments in over 8 months." Dr. Patel had turned the screen toward her. "Sometimes when the body is no longer under the stress of treatments, when couples truly stop trying." She pointed to a dark sac on the screen. "That's gestational sac number 1. Her finger moved slightly. "And that's number 2, a final movement. And that's number 3. Sophia's medical training had kicked in, allowing her to process the information even as emotional comprehension lagged behind. Triplets? Spontaneous triplets after 8 years of infertility? It appears so, Dr. Patel had confirmed. "Based on measurements, you're approximately 10 weeks along. And before you ask, yes, this is extremely rare but not unprecedented. Particularly in cases where fertility issues were multifactorial rather than structural." The examination had continued with blood pressure monitoring, additional blood draws, and a lengthy discussion about the high-risk nature of a triplet pregnancy, particularly for a first-time mother at 39. Dr. Patel had outlined immediate next steps, referral to a maternal fetal medicine specialist, dietary adjustments, work modifications. Through it all, Sophia had maintained her composure, asking relevant questions and taking notes as though discussing a complex research protocol rather than a life-altering development in her own body. It wasn't until she was alone in her car that the emotional impact had hit her. 3 heartbeats, 3 distinct flutters she had seen on the ultrasound screen. After years of negative tests and loss, her body now harbored 3 potential lives. Her scientific mind cataloged the statistics: high-risk pregnancy, increased chance of preterm labor, potential complications including gestational diabetes and preeclampsia. The odds of carrying triplets to a reasonably safe delivery date, even 34 weeks, were concerning. Yet alongside these clinical assessments, another feeling had emerged, a tentative, fragile hope she had carefully packed away months ago when they had decided to stop treatments. When Nikolai's car pulled into the driveway, Sophia finally stepped out of her vehicle. He approached quickly, concern evident in his expression. "What happened? Are you okay?" he asked, reaching for her hands. Sophia looked at him, suddenly unsure how to convey news of this magnitude. "Let's go inside." In their kitchen, she placed her bag on the counter and turned to face him. The appointment with Dr. Patel wasn't routine after all. Nikolai's face tightened. "Did she find something concerning? Is it related to the treatments we did?" "In a way," Sophia said carefully. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to him. These are for you. Nikolai opened it, pulling out 3 small printouts, ultrasound images, each labeled simply Baby A, Baby B, Baby C. He stared at them, understanding dawning slowly. These are triplets, Sophia confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm 10 weeks pregnant with triplets. Nikolai looked up from the images, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and astonishment. How is this possible? We stopped everything. We made peace with... Dr. Patel says it happens sometimes when the pressure is off, when the body isn't being manipulated by medications and procedures. She placed her hand on her still flat abdomen. Apparently, my body decided to overcompensate. Nikolai set the pictures on the counter with trembling hands and stepped toward her. Are you okay? Is this safe for you? The question, centered on her well-being rather than the pregnancy itself, broke something open inside Sophia. Tears welled in her eyes for the first time since hearing the news. It's high risk, she admitted. Multiple gestation always is, especially at my age. There will be specialists monitoring, possibly bed rest later on. She took a deep breath. But that's not what I'm most afraid of. Nikolai gently brushed a tear from her cheek. Tell me. I'm afraid to hope again, she whispered. We've been here before, not with triplets, but with positive tests, with heartbeats on screens, and it's always ended the same way. Nikolai nodded, understanding completely. Every milestone in their previous pregnancies had been marked by cautious optimism, followed by devastating loss. The weight of those experiences couldn't be erased by this unexpected development. What did Dr. Patel say about viability? He asked carefully. She said all 3 look properly situated and are developing on schedule, but she also said we should be prepared for all possibilities, from losing one or more to potential selective reduction if continuing with triplets becomes too dangerous. Sophia's clinical tone belied the emotional complexity behind these options. What do you want to do? Nikolai asked, his hands now resting lightly on her shoulders. Sophia looked into his eyes, searching for her own answer as much as sharing it with him. I want to try. I know it's irrational after everything we've been through. I know the statistics, but I want to give them a chance. Her voice broke slightly. All 3 of them. Nikolai pulled her gently into his arms, resting his cheek against her hair. Then we try. One day at a time. No expectations, no counting on any particular outcome, just taking each moment as it comes. They stood together in their kitchen, the afternoon sunlight streaming through windows, illuminating the ultrasound images on the counter. 3 tiny possibilities in a journey that had already contained so much loss and resilience. This moment of hope after heartbreak reminds us how quickly life can change direction. For Nikolai and Sophia, years of disappointment have suddenly transformed into a new chapter filled with both possibility and uncertainty. If you've been moved by their journey so far, now is the perfect time to subscribe to our channel. In the next segment, we'll explore how this unexpected development collides with the family conflict brewing between Nikolai and his parents. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts on how Nikolai and Sophia should navigate this delicate situation. Should they share their news with his family despite the recent confrontation? Your insights might be featured in our community discussion segment at the end of this episode. Hit the notification bell to be alerted when we release the next part of this compelling family story, where new life meets old wounds. Later that evening, Sophia and Nikolai sat on their bedroom floor, backs against the wall, the 3 ultrasound images arranged in front of them like precious artifacts. The initial shock had given way to a strange calm, the eye of a hurricane of emotions neither was ready to fully navigate. I keep thinking this is a dream, Nikolai said, gently touching the corner of one image. After all this time, all the specialists who told us it was practically impossible without intervention. Sophia nodded, her scientific mind still processing the statistical improbability. Dr. Patel explained that sometimes when hormone treatments stop, there can be a rebound effect. My body had been stimulated for so long that when everything settled, it overcompensated. 3 babies, Nikolai whispered, the words themselves seeming too fragile to speak at full volume. 3 heartbeats. 3 very early heartbeats, Sophia cautioned, her protective instincts already asserting themselves. We need to be realistic about the odds, Nikolai. He looked at her, noting the careful restraint in her expression, a defense mechanism developed through years of raised and dashed hopes. Tell me what you're really thinking, he said softly. Not the medical facts or the statistics, just what you're feeling right now. Sophia took a deep breath, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen. I'm terrified, she admitted, not just of losing them, but of allowing myself to want them this badly. Her voice grew steadier as she continued. When we decided to stop treatments, I made peace with our life as it was. I found joy in our work, our home, our relationship. Now suddenly there's this possibility again, and I don't know if I can survive losing it a final time. Nikolai took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I understand. We don't have to decide everything tonight. We can take this one day at a time. I also feel... Sophia hesitated, searching for the right words. I feel strangely validated, as though my body is finally saying, see, I could do this all along. A small smile formed on Nikolai's lips. Your body certainly has a dramatic sense of timing. One baby would have been miraculous enough. For several minutes they sat in companionable silence, the magnitude of the day's revelations settling around them like gentle snow. Then Nikolai stood suddenly, moving to their closet and reaching toward the highest shelf. What are you doing? Sophia asked. He returned with a small wooden box she hadn't seen in years, hand-carved with intricate geometric patterns. It had been a gift from his grandfather on their wedding day. I kept them, he said quietly, opening the lid to reveal a collection of small items, a tiny knitted cap they had purchased during their second pregnancy, a journal filled with notes from their first IVF cycle, a silver rattle that had been the first gift from Sophia's parents when they announced their third pregnancy. I thought you had gotten rid of these, Sophia said, her voice catching. I couldn't, Nikolai admitted. Even when we agreed to move on, I kept them tucked away, not to dwell on what we'd lost, but to honor it. He lifted out the journal, its pages slightly yellowed now. I've been thinking about how to react to this news ever since you showed me the ultrasounds. Part of me wants to shout from the rooftops. Another part wants to hide away with you, telling no one until we're certain. Sophia touched the tiny cap, its soft yarn a tangible reminder of hopes once held and released. What does your heart tell you? That I'm scared too, he confessed, his voice dropping to a whisper. That I want these babies so much it physically hurts. That I'm afraid to believe this could actually happen for us. His eyes glistened as he continued. But also that whatever happens, whether we meet these three little ones or not, we've already survived so much together. We'll find our way through this too. Sophia leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. I keep thinking about practical things, how to rearrange the house, whether to convert the home office or the guest room first, if my health insurance covers multiple birth specialists. Defense mechanisms, Nikolai said with understanding. Planning helps you feel in control. She nodded. When Dr. Patel first showed me the ultrasound, do you know what flashed through my mind? Not joy or excitement, but a research paper I read last year on triplet development milestones. Nikolai laughed softly. That sounds exactly like you, and I love you for it. He carefully returned the mementos to their box, closing the lid with gentle reverence before setting it on their nightstand rather than back on the high shelf. A small gesture of allowing their past losses to exist alongside their present hopes. So what happens next? He asked. Medically, I mean. Sophia shifted into a more comfortable position, her scientist's mind organizing the information Dr. Patel had provided. I have an appointment with a maternal-fetal medicine specialist next week. Dr. Reyes at Boston Medical. She specializes in high-risk multiples. And work? Will you need to cut back hours? Not immediately, Sophia said. But eventually, yes. Third trimester bed rest is common with triplets, sometimes starting as early as 24 weeks. I'll need to transition my research team gradually. Prepare them to continue without daily supervision. Nikolai nodded, his mind already calculating financial adjustments, potential home modifications, childcare scenarios. I can scale back travel, move more meetings to video calls. Thomas can handle the Frankfurt expansion. Nikolai, Sophia interrupted gently. We don't need to solve everything tonight. There is one immediate decision, though, Sophia said, her expression growing serious. Who do we tell, and when? The question hung between them, laden with implications. Sophia's parents would be overjoyed. Their support had never wavered through the years of treatments and disappointments. But Nikolai's family, particularly after the recent confrontation with Vivienne, presented a more complex situation. I'd like to tell your parents soon, Nikolai said carefully. They've been with us through everything. Sophia nodded. And yours? Nikolai was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally admitted. Part of me wants to protect this news from them, especially my mother. I don't want her negativity anywhere near this pregnancy. But they're your family, Sophia said, and regardless of recent events, these would be their grandchildren. Biology doesn't automatically grant access to our lives, Nikolai replied, a new firmness in his voice that had emerged since the dinner confrontation. My mother made her feelings about our marriage quite clear. I'm not eager to subject you, or our potential children, to that kind of judgment. Sophia took his hand. I appreciate your protectiveness, but I've never wanted to be the reason you're estranged from your family. You're not the reason, Nikolai assured her. Their behavior is the reason, their choices. Before Sophia could respond, Nikolai's phone rang with his office ringtone, the specific tone he used for administrative emergencies. He checked the screen, frowning. It's Melissa from the front desk. That's odd at this hour, he answered, putting the call on speaker. Melissa, is everything all right? I'm sorry to bother you after hours, Mr. Volkov. Melissa's voice came through, professional but with an undercurrent of tension. There's a situation at the office I thought you should know about immediately. Nikolai straightened. What kind of situation? Your mother came by about an hour ago, quite agitated. She was demanding to see you, saying it was a family emergency. When I explained you had left for the day, she refused to leave. Sophia and Nikolai exchanged concerned glances. Is she still there? Nikolai asked. No, security eventually convinced her to leave, but she was... Melissa paused, clearly choosing her words carefully. She seemed distressed, sir. She mentioned something about your sister Elena repeatedly. Said you weren't answering her calls. Nikolai's expression darkened. I haven't received any calls from my mother today. There's more, Melissa continued reluctantly. She told the security staff that she'd be going to your home next. I thought you should have some warning. Thank you, Melissa. You did the right thing. Nikolai ended the call and immediately checked his call history. Nothing from her or my father. 3 missed calls from an unknown Chicago number, though. No voicemails. Sophia was already moving toward the window, peering out at their quiet street. Do you think she's actually coming here? If she is, we need to decide now how to handle it, Nikolai said, his protective instincts shifting into high gear. Given your condition, the last thing you need is stress and confrontation. The doorbell rang, its normally pleasant chime now sounding like an alarm. Sophia and Nikolai froze, the evening's peaceful intimacy shattered by the intrusion of complicated reality. I'll handle this, Nikolai said, moving toward the stairs. You stay up here. Sophia caught his arm. No, whatever this is, we face it together, just like everything else. As they descended the stairs, the ultrasound images remained on their bedroom floor, 3 tiny lives unaware of the complex human emotions swirling around. Their fragile existence, the joy and fear and determination of the 2 people who already loved them fiercely, even in their microscopic state. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Nikolai took Sophia's hand, and together they walked toward whatever awaited them on the other side. The following morning, Nikolai and Sophia arrived at the offices of Reed Technologies, a biotech firm partnering with Sophia's research team. They had scheduled an early meeting to discuss intellectual property rights for a new compound, but their minds were elsewhere after a sleepless night. Vivian had never appeared at their door. After 30 tense minutes of waiting, Nikolai had called the unknown Chicago number. A hospital receptionist had answered, explaining that Elena had been admitted following what appeared to be an anxiety attack. Vivian had left the hospital against medical advice, declaring she needed to speak with Nikolai immediately. I still think we should have flown to Chicago last night, Nikolai said, as they stepped into the elevator at Reed Technologies. Sophia adjusted her portfolio. The hospital confirmed Elena is stable. Your father is with her. Flying across the country based on your mother's dramatic exit wouldn't help anyone. The elevator doors opened onto Reed's executive floor, revealing an unexpected scene. Melissa from Nikolai's office stood near the reception desk, speaking urgently with Reed's security director. When she spotted Nikolai, relief washed over her face. Mr. Volkov, thank goodness. Your mother arrived 20 minutes ago demanding to join your meeting. We explained it wasn't possible, but she refused to leave. Nikolai scanned the lobby. Where is she now? Conference room B. Mr. Reed thought it best to give her a private space rather than having security remove her. Sophia touched Nikolai's arm. Go talk to her. I'll explain the situation to the Reed team and reschedule if necessary. Nikolai hesitated. You shouldn't have to manage this alone. I'm fine, Sophia assured him. Family comes first. Go. As Nikolai approached conference room B, he could see his mother through the glass walls. She sat rigidly in a chair, her normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Her hair, usually styled impeccably, looked as though she had run her hands through it repeatedly. Her expression was drawn, with dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, concern overrode his anger. Whatever had brought her here clearly wasn't trivial. He opened the door. Mom, Vivian stood immediately. Finally, do you have any idea what I've been through trying to reach you? I understand Elena is in the hospital, Nikolai said, closing the door behind him. Dad is with her. The doctors say she's stable. Stable? Vivian's voice rose. Is that all you have to say? Your sister collapsed in her apartment, alone. The neighbors found her when they heard her fall. Nikolai maintained his composure, though his heart raced at this news. I'm sorry to hear that. Why didn't you or Dad call me directly instead of creating scenes in my office and threatening to come to my home? We did call. Vivian insisted, repeatedly. You've been ignoring us since that ridiculous dinner incident. I haven't received any calls from either of you, Nikolai countered, pulling out his phone and displaying the call log. The only calls were from the hospital, which I returned immediately. Vivian dismissed this with a wave. Your father was using his new phone. The point is, Elena needs you, and you're here in Boston playing happy couples with Sophia instead of supporting your family. The familiar accusation that his marriage somehow contradicted family loyalty reignited Nikolai's anger. My wife is not an obstacle to family support. And speaking of support, what exactly does Elena need from me that she can't get from you and Dad? The hospital said she's receiving appropriate care. Vivian's expression shifted, vulnerability briefly replacing indignation. She's asking for you. She won't tell us what's wrong, but she keeps saying she needs to speak with you. She paused, adding reluctantly, she says it's about Dad. This unexpected detail caught Nikolai off guard. What about Dad? I don't know. She refuses to explain. Vivian's composure slipped further. Nikolai, something is very wrong. Elena has always been sensitive, but this is different. She's terrified of something. Nikolai studied his mother, noting the genuine fear beneath her controlling exterior. Why come all this way instead of just telling me this over the phone? Because I know my children, Vivian replied. If I had simply called with vague concerns, you would have dismissed it as another family drama. I needed you to see how serious this is. Before Nikolai could respond, the door opened. Sophia entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Nikolai and, after a brief hesitation, offered the second to Vivian. I thought you might need this, she said quietly. The flight from Chicago is exhausting. Vivian appeared momentarily thrown by the gesture. She accepted the coffee with a stiff nod. Thank you. The Reed team has agreed to reschedule, Sophia informed Nikolai. They understand family emergencies. This doesn't concern you, Vivian said, her momentary softening evaporating. This is a family matter. Sophia's expression remained calm. I am family, Vivian. Family by marriage, Vivian corrected. This involves Nikolai's sister, his blood relative. Nikolai stepped between them. Stop it, Mom. Sophia stays. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of both of us. Vivian's lips thinned. Fine. Your sister needs you in Chicago today. Something is happening with your father that has her absolutely terrified, and she won't tell me what it is. Has she spoken to anyone else? Sophia asked. A friend? A therapist? She mentioned trying to call you several times, Nikolai, Vivian said, ignoring Sophia. She said you were the only one who would understand because you saw it too. Nikolai and Sophia exchanged a glance, a silent communication born of years together. Saw what? Nikolai asked carefully. That's what I've been trying to determine, Vivian exclaimed, frustration breaking through. Your father says she's being hysterical, that she's imagining things. But I've never seen her like this. Sophia moved closer to Nikolai, her hand finding his. When did this behavior start? Again, Vivian directed her answer to Nikolai as if Sophia hadn't spoken. About 3 weeks ago, after your father returned from that business trip to Boston. She paused. The one when I came for dinner. A cold sensation settled in Nikolai's stomach. Dad was in Boston? You said he couldn't make it because of a business emergency in Chicago. He was here for meetings earlier that week. He flew back before I arrived. Vivian frowned. What does that matter now? Nikolai's mind raced, connecting dots he had previously kept separated. Elena's increasing calls, her vague messages about needing to talk about family matters. His father's unusual absence from Vivian's Boston visit. Did Elena and Dad have some kind of argument? He asked. Not that I'm aware of. She's been acting strangely ever since your father visited her apartment to fix that leaking faucet. Vivian's expression darkened. Now she won't let him near her. When he came to the hospital yesterday, she became so agitated they had to sedate her. Sophia's grip on Nikolai's hand tightened. They both recognized the pattern, though neither wanted to articulate it aloud. Nikolai, Sophia said softly, I think you need to go to Chicago. He nodded slowly, the weight of implication settling heavily between them. I think I do. Vivian looked between them, sensing an unspoken understanding she wasn't part of. What is it? What are you two thinking? Nikolai met his mother's gaze directly. Mom, has Dad ever been inappropriate with Elena? The question landed like a physical blow. Vivian stepped back, her face draining of color. How dare you? How dare you suggest such a thing about your father? I'm not suggesting anything, Nikolai said carefully. I'm asking if you've ever noticed anything concerning... No, Vivian's voice rose sharply. Your father is a respected physician, a family man. He would never... She broke off, her expression hardening. This is her influence, isn't it? She gestured toward Sophia. Putting these disgusting ideas in your head. Sophia inhaled deeply, her professional calm giving way to something fiercer. Enough, Vivian. I have tolerated your dismissal and your thinly veiled hostility for years. I have respected your position in Nikolai's life despite your continuous efforts to undermine our marriage. But I will not stand here and be blamed for asking necessary questions about Elena's safety. Vivian turned to Nikolai, ignoring Sophia entirely. I came here because your sister needs you. Instead, I find you making revolting accusations about your father based on nothing but hysteria. It's not based on nothing, Nikolai said quietly. And it's not coming from Sophia. Then what? Vivian demanded. What possible reason could you have for saying such things? Nikolai closed his eyes briefly, steeling himself. When I was 14, I saw Dad coming out of Elena's room late at night. When I asked him about it the next morning, he said she had a nightmare. But Elena told me later that she didn't have any nightmares, and asked me not to tell you that Dad had been in her room. Vivian shook her head vehemently. A misunderstanding. Children confuse things. Maybe, Nikolai acknowledged, but there were other times when Elena would suddenly go quiet when Dad entered a room. The way she stopped wearing certain clothes she said Dad didn't approve of. How she begged to go to college out of state even though she had a full scholarship to University of Chicago. All normal teenage behaviors, Vivian insisted. You're connecting unrelated events and creating a narrative that doesn't exist, am I? Nikolai challenged. Then why is Elena asking for me specifically? Why is she saying I saw it too? Why is she terrified of being alone with Dad? The conference room fell silent, the accusation hanging in the air between them. Sophia moved forward, her demeanor shifting from defensive to compassionate. Vivian, no one wants these questions to be necessary, but Elena's behavior suggests something traumatic has occurred or is occurring. As medical professionals, both you and I know the patterns. Don't you dare use your limited medical knowledge to analyze my family, Vivian hissed. You're an outsider. You always have been. I'm not an outsider, Sophia said firmly. I'm your daughter-in-law. I'm carrying your grandchildren. The words emerged before she could reconsider them. The pregnancy news she and Nikolai had planned to keep private now exposed in the heat of confrontation. Vivian froze. What did you say? Nikolai moved to Sophia's side, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. Sophia is pregnant, with triplets. Vivian stared at them, disbelief etched across her features. That's impossible. You stopped treatments months ago. It happened naturally, Sophia explained, her hand moving instinctively to her abdomen. We just found out yesterday. Triplets, Vivian repeated, sinking into a chair. Without intervention? Yes, Nikolai confirmed. We're still processing it ourselves. For a moment, the tension in the room shifted. Vivian looked genuinely stunned, the news temporarily displacing her anger. How far along? 10 weeks, Sophia said. We weren't planning to tell anyone yet. It's still very early, and with my history." Understanding flickered across Vivian's face. A moment of connection as one woman who had practiced medicine to another. "Multiple gestation at your age. High risk." Sophia nodded. "Very high risk. Which is why stress and conflict are particularly concerning right now." Vivian's gaze moved between them, calculation visible behind her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its edge. "Nikolai still needs to come to Chicago. Elena needs him." "I agree," Sophia said before Nikolai could respond. "He should go today." Nikolai looked at her in surprise. "What about you?" "The appointment with Dr. Reyes is not until next week," Sophia finished. "Your sister needs you now. I'll be fine." Vivian observed this exchange with an unreadable expression. Then, with visible effort, she addressed Sophia directly. "The allegations you and Nikolai are making about my husband, they can't be true. I would have noticed. I would have known." The statement held less conviction than her previous denials, revealing the first crack in her certainty. "Sometimes we don't see what we're not prepared to see," Sophia said gently, "especially when it involves people we love and trust." "Alexander is a pediatrician," Vivian said, as if this credential alone disproved the possibility. "He's dedicated his life to helping children, which would make him above suspicion," Nikolai noted quietly. "The perfect cover." Vivian's face crumpled slightly before she reasserted control. "These are still just suspicions, circumstantial observations, which is why we need to speak with Elena," Nikolai said, "to understand what's happening from her perspective." A tense silence filled the room as Vivian visibly struggled with competing loyalties. To her husband of 40 years, to her daughter in crisis, to her son standing firm before her, to the grandchildren unexpectedly entering the equation. "If these accusations are false," she finally said, "they could destroy our family. Alexander's reputation, everything we've built. And if they're true," Nikolai countered, "then the family as you envision it is already built on a lie that has hurt Elena deeply." Vivian looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I need to return to the hospital. Elena will be wondering where I am." "I'll book a flight to Chicago," Nikolai said. "I'll come straight to the hospital." Vivian stood, gathering her composure along with her purse. At the door, she paused, turning back towards Sophia with visible reluctance. "The pregnancy. You should be careful. Traveling to Chicago in your condition wouldn't be advisable." The statement, the closest thing to concern Vivian had ever expressed for Sophia's well-being, hung awkwardly in the air. "Thank you," Sophia replied simply. "I'll take care." After Vivian left, Nikolai and Sophia remained in the conference room, the morning sunlight casting long rectangles across the polished table. The confrontation had shifted everything, bringing long-buried suspicions into the open, revealing their pregnancy in an unplanned moment, and creating the first tenuous possibility of change in family dynamics that had seemed immovably toxic. "I'm sorry," Sophia said, breaking the silence. "I didn't mean to tell her about the babies, it just came out." Nikolai shook his head. "Maybe it needed to. Everything needs to come into the light now, the good and the bad." As they began making arrangements for Nikolai's trip to Chicago, both recognized they stood at a pivotal moment. The family secrets that had festered for decades were finally emerging, painful but necessary, like infection drawn from a wound that could never heal while hidden. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time, it held the possibility of truth, however difficult that truth might be to face. The weeks following the confrontation at Reed Technologies brought seismic shifts for Sophia. Her body, which had been a battlefield of disappointment for years, now transformed with astonishing speed. By 14 weeks, her typically slim frame showed the unmistakable curve of pregnancy, more pronounced than a singleton pregnancy at the same stage. Triplets often show earlier, Dr. Reyes explained during their first consultation. Your uterus is expanding to accommodate 3 amniotic sacs, 3 placentas, and 3 growing fetuses. The physical changes came with unexpected challenges. Morning sickness struck not just in the morning but in persistent waves throughout the day. Sophia, who had always prided herself on her focus and stamina at work, found herself needing to rest frequently. Simple tasks like climbing the stairs to their bedroom left her breathless. Your blood volume is increasing dramatically to support the pregnancy, Dr. Reyes noted. Your heart is working overtime. Think of it as running a marathon every day just by existing. Sophia approached these challenges with the same methodical determination she applied to her research. She created spreadsheets tracking her nutrition, symptoms, and weight gain. She set timers to remind herself to drink water and change positions. She converted a corner of their home office into a comfortable resting area where she could work while elevating her increasingly swollen feet. Yet beneath this practical approach, emotional currents ran deep. Each ultrasound brought both joy and terror. Joy at seeing the three distinct forms growing steadily, terror at how easily it could all disappear. She found herself holding her breath during each examination, until all three heartbeats were confirmed, only then allowing herself a moment of cautious celebration. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she confessed to Nikolai after their 16-week appointment. "Every good report feels like we're just getting closer to the moment when something goes wrong." But with each passing week, each milestone reached, something new began growing alongside her babies. A fragile, tentative hope that perhaps this time the story might have a different ending. For Nikolai, transformation came through action. The day after returning from Chicago, where Elena had confirmed his worst fears about their father, he initiated a complete restructuring of his professional life. "I'm not making the same mistake twice," he told Thomas, his business partner, as they reorganized the company workflow. "I failed to protect my sister. I won't fail my wife or my children." He converted the guest bedroom into a nursery designed for efficiency. 3 cribs arranged to allow easy access, a changing station with built-in storage for the mountain of supplies 3 babies would require, rocking chairs positioned near the window to catch morning light. His business adaptations were equally methodical. He installed video conferencing equipment in their home office, transitioned clients to his senior consultants, and rearranged his schedule to eliminate travel entirely during Sophia's 3rd trimester. "You don't need to put everything on hold," Sophia protested when he canceled a major presentation in Frankfurt. "I'm not putting anything on hold," he corrected. "I'm prioritizing what matters most." When her doctor ordered bed rest at 24 weeks, earlier than anticipated due to signs of cervical shortening, Nikolai seamlessly shifted into his contingency plan. He moved his essential work files into their bedroom, setting up a small desk near the window where he could work while keeping Sophia company. The man who had once defined himself through professional achievement now found meaning in different metrics. How well Sophia slept despite her discomfort, how many meals he could prepare that would appeal to her changing tastes, how effectively he could filter external stresses from reaching her. His transformation revealed itself most clearly in moments of stillness. Sitting beside Sophia on their bed, his hand resting gently on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement beneath his palm. "They know your touch," Sophia told him one evening. "They always move more when you're here." The wonder in her voice mirrored the shift in his own heart, from guarded hope to active love for these 3 lives they had stopped expecting but now couldn't imagine living without. Vivian's transformation came more slowly, emerging in hesitant gestures rather than dramatic changes. Following the confrontation about Alexander and his subsequent admission of inappropriate behavior with Elena, Vivian had retreated into shocked silence, canceling her medical appointments and shutting herself in the Chicago house. The first sign of change came 3 weeks later, a package delivered to Nikolai and Sophia's home containing 3 identical silver rattles, each engraved with a small star. The accompanying note, written in Vivian's precise handwriting, said simply, "For my grandchildren, may they always find their way home." Sophia placed the rattles on the nursery shelf, uncertain how to interpret this olive branch from a woman who had dismissed their marriage for years. The next overture came as a voicemail on Sophia's personal phone, the first time Vivian had contacted her directly rather than through Nikolai. "I've been researching triplet pregnancies." Vivian's voice sounded strained but determined. "There's a specialist in Chicago who pioneered a monitoring technique for identical multiples. I've scheduled a consultation for you, if you're interested. Virtual, of course, given your travel restrictions." Sophia, after consulting with Dr. Reyes, accepted the offer. During the video call, Vivian remained professionally distant but attentive, taking notes and asking relevant follow-up questions. When the specialist recommended additional monitoring equipment not covered by insurance, Vivian arranged for its delivery the next day. "You don't need to do this," Nikolai told his mother during their weekly phone call. "Yes," Vivian replied softly. "I do." The most significant change appeared at 28 weeks, when Vivian requested permission to visit. She arrived alone, having separated from Alexander as he awaited trial for the charges Elena had finally felt strong enough to file. The woman who entered their home appeared physically diminished, thinner, grayer, her customary perfect posture slightly bent as though under invisible weight. Yet something else had emerged in her manner, a hard-won humility that softened her sharp edges. She stood awkwardly in their living room, holding a gift bag. "I brought something. For the babies." Inside were 3 handmade blankets, each a different color but worked in the same intricate pattern. "I made these," Vivian explained. "My grandmother taught me this stitch when I was a girl in Russia. Each one took about a month." The realization that Vivian had been creating these since learning of the pregnancy, even while processing her husband's betrayal and her daughter's trauma, touched something in both Nikolai and Sophia. "They're beautiful," Sophia said sincerely. "Would you like to see the nursery where they'll go?" As Sophia's pregnancy reached 32 weeks, a critical milestone for triplets, the transformation in all 3 lives converged into a new family dynamic. Not perfect, not without lingering tensions, but fundamentally changed from where they had begun. Sophia, now significantly limited by the weight and strain of carrying 3 growing babies, had found unexpected strength and vulnerability. The scientist who had always prided herself on independence now accepted help gracefully, recognizing that allowing others to support her was its own form of courage. Nikolai, whose identity had been divided between family loyalty and protecting his wife, discovered that authentic love required truth rather than compromise. The painful exposure of his father's actions had freed him to build genuine relationships based on reality instead of obligation. And Vivian, perhaps changed most profoundly, was slowly rebuilding herself after the collapse of the family narrative she had defended for decades. Her career as a physician had taught her to trust observable evidence. Now she was learning to apply that same standard to emotional truths she had long denied. On a Sunday afternoon in early November, these transformed versions of themselves gathered in Sophia and Nikolai's living room. Sophia reclined on the sofa, supported by cushions, while Nikolai and Vivian assembled the 3 infant car seats that had arrived that morning. "The safety ratings on these are excellent," Vivian noted, examining the instruction manual. "But the installation process is unnecessarily complicated." "Welcome to modern parenting," Nikolai replied with a small smile. "Everything designed for maximum safety and minimum intuition." Sophia watched them working together, not with the easy comfort of a healed relationship, but with the careful attention of people committed to building something new from broken pieces. These moments of transformation remind us how families can evolve when truth and love become the foundation. Nikolai, Sophia, and Vivian's journey continues as they prepare for 3 new lives that will further reshape their world. If you've been moved by their story of healing and growth, now is the perfect time to subscribe to our channel. Our next episode will take you into the delivery room as Sophia and Nikolai welcome their triplets and navigate the first challenging months of parenting. Hit the notification bell to ensure you don't miss this emotional conclusion to our Family Bonds series, and share in the comments your own experiences with family transformation, how difficult conversations led to healing in your own life. Sometimes the most beautiful beginnings emerge from what we thought were endings. Join us next week to witness this family's new chapter unfold. At 34 weeks and 3 days, Sophia woke at 2:17 a.m. with a sharp pain low in her abdomen. She lay still, breathing steadily, waiting to see if it would pass. When a second contraction followed 6 minutes later, she gently shook Nikolai awake. "I think we need to call Dr. Reyes," she said, her voice remarkably calm. "Something's happening." Nikolai was instantly alert, reaching for his phone while helping Sophia sit up. As she shifted position, she felt a rush of warm fluid. "My water broke," she whispered, fear finally breaking through her composed exterior. The drive to Massachusetts General Hospital's high-risk maternity unit took precisely 12 minutes, a journey they had rehearsed weekly since week 30. Sophia breathed through increasingly intense contractions while Nikolai navigated pre-dawn streets, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. "Too early," she kept saying between breaths. "They're not ready." 34 weeks for triplets is good, Nikolai reminded her, repeating Dr. Reyes' previous assurances. "Their lungs have been developing well. Remember last week's scan?" At the hospital, events accelerated. Dr. Reyes, already alerted, met them in the assessment room where monitors revealed Sophia's blood pressure climbing dangerously. "We're looking at preeclampsia," Dr. Reyes explained, studying the readings. "The protein levels in your urine confirm it. We need to deliver these babies today." But the birth plan, Sophia began, has always been flexible. Dr. Reyes finished gently. Right now, your safety and the baby's safety require immediate delivery. We're preparing the OR for a C-section. As nurses moved efficiently around them, Sophia gripped Nikolai's hand. Call your mother, she said, surprising them both. She should be here. Are you sure? Sophia nodded through another contraction. She's changed, and if something happens to me, nothing will happen, Nikolai interrupted fiercely. If it does, Sophia insisted, the babies will need her. You will need her. As they wheeled Sophia toward the operating room, her blood pressure continued rising, and her vision began to blur at the edges. Classic signs of preeclampsia progressing toward eclampsia, a life-threatening complication. We need to move now, Dr. Reyes announced, her tone shifting from calm to urgent. Mr. Volkov, please give your phone to the nurse. She'll contact family while you change into scrubs. Nikolai bent to kiss Sophia's forehead. I'll be right beside you. Always. Her last conscious thought before the anesthesia took effect was of the 3 lives inside her, about to face the world much sooner than planned. When Vivian received Nikolai's call, she was already awake, reviewing patient files in her Chicago apartment. She listened silently to the nurse's explanation, asked 3 precise questions about Sophia's condition, then said simply, I'll be on the next flight. 2 hours later, as surgeons delivered the second of Sophia's triplets, Vivian was boarding a plane at O'Hare. By the time all 3 babies were in the NICU being assessed, she was halfway across the country. And when complications from Sophia's surgery sent Nikolai racing from the nursery back to the operating room, Vivian was stepping through the hospital's main entrance. She found her son pacing outside the surgical suite, his scrubs stained with blood, his face ashen. What happened? She asked, setting down her small overnight bag. Postpartum hemorrhage, Nikolai said, his voice hollow. They couldn't stop the bleeding. They're transfusing her now and trying to repair the damage. Vivian nodded once, her medical training allowing her to understand the severity without needing elaboration. And the babies? 2 girls and a boy. The girls are doing well, over 4 pounds each. The boy is smaller, having trouble breathing. Have you seen them? Nikolai shook his head. I was with them for 10 minutes before they called me about Sophia. I need to be here when she comes out. Vivian placed a hand on his arm, a gesture so rare in their family that it momentarily startled him. Go see your children, she said firmly. I'll stay here and monitor Sophia's situation. I'll find you immediately if anything changes. Mom, I can't. You can, she interrupted. You must. Those babies need their father right now while their mother is fighting. I'm a physician. I know what questions to ask, what complications to watch for. Let me do this for you, for Sophia. The dynamics between them shifted in that moment. Vivian no longer the controlling matriarch, but a mother offering her specific strengths in service to her son's needs. After a moment's hesitation, Nikolai nodded. The NICU is on the 4th floor. They're under the name Volkov Chin. Go, Vivian said, already turning toward the nurse's station with the authoritative posture of someone who had spent decades in hospital corridors. Your children are waiting. In the NICU, 3 clear incubators contained the newest members of the Volkov Chen family. Nikolai stood between them, his gaze moving from one tiny face to another, torn between joy at their existence and terror over Sophia's condition. The twins girls, temporarily identified as Baby A and Baby B until Sophia could participate in naming them, lay in adjacent incubators. Both had shock of dark hair and exhibited the strong vital signs typical of larger triplets. Baby A occasionally waved small fists in protest when nurses checked her vital signs. Baby B slept more quietly, her tiny features echoing Sophia's delicate bone structure. Baby C, the boy, occupied an incubator surrounded by additional equipment. Weighing just under 4 pounds, he required supplemental oxygen and closer monitoring. His skin held a slightly bluish tint that the neonatologist explained was common for the smallest multiple. His lungs need a little more time to mature, Dr. Winters explained, adjusting one of the monitors. But he's fighting hard. There's strength in him. For 4 hours, Nikolai alternated between sitting with his children and checking on Sophia's surgery. During one return to the NICU, he found Vivian standing by Baby C's incubator, her hand through the access port, one finger gently clasped in his miniature grip. Sophia is stable, she said without looking up. The bleeding is controlled. They're closing now. She'll be in recovery for at least an hour before you can see her." Relief weakened Nikolai's knees. He sank into the chair beside his mother, watching his son's tiny chest rise and fall with each assisted breath. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. Vivian nodded, her eyes still on her grandson. "He has your determination," she observed. "Look how he holds on." They sat together in the hushed atmosphere of the NICU, the beeping monitors and soft whoosh of ventilators creating a rhythmic backdrop to the start of their new reality. 3 new lives had entered the world, each already displaying distinct personalities even in their first hours. Sophia's doctor found them there an hour later. "She's awake," he told Nikolai, "asking for you and the babies." The following weeks transformed the hospital into the center of their family universe. Sophia recovered slowly, her body depleted by both the triplet pregnancy and surgical complications. She was finally discharged after 8 days, though the babies remained in the NICU, a situation that brought daily tears as she was wheeled out without them. "It feels wrong," she told Nikolai as he drove her home, "like I'm abandoning them." "We'll be back in 3 hours for evening care time," he reminded her. "The nurses have our number. They'll call if anything changes." "I know," she sighed. "It's just not how I imagined it." Their home routine quickly oriented around hospital visits. Nikolai and Sophia spent every possible hour in the NICU, learning to care for their fragile children under nurses' watchful guidance. They took turns doing kangaroo care, holding the babies skin to skin against their chests to promote bonding and development. Surprisingly, Vivian became an essential part of this new pattern. Rather than returning to Chicago after Sophia stabilized, she rented a small apartment nearby, creating a rotation that ensured the babies always had family present. The triplets, finally named May and Elena for the girls and Alex for the boy, responded to these consistent presences. Research had shown that NICU babies with regular family contact typically progressed faster, and the Volkov-Chen triplets proved this true. The girls graduated from their incubators after 2 weeks. Alex took longer, his smaller size requiring additional support, but by week 3, he too was maintaining his temperature independently. One evening in the baby's 4th week, Sophia arrived to find Vivian gently bathing May, speaking to her in soft Russian. The older woman demonstrated how to support the baby's head while washing her hair, her movements confident from years of medical practice yet tender in a way Sophia had never witnessed. "You're very good with her," Sophia observed. Vivian looked up, momentarily self-conscious. "I delivered hundreds of babies during my career, but it's different with your own grandchildren. They feel more fragile, yet stronger too," Sophia said, moving to check on Elena and Alex and their adjacent bassinets. Vivian nodded, understanding the paradox. These tiny beings seemed impossibly delicate, yet showed remarkable resilience every day, much like the healing family surrounding them. The NICU journey continued 6 more weeks, with each baby reaching discharge criteria at different times. Elena went home first at 7 weeks, her robust weight gain and steady vital signs meeting all benchmarks. May followed 5 days later. Alex, always the smallest fighter, remained until his original due date, finally joining his sisters after 9 weeks in hospital care. On the day they brought Alex home, completing their family circle, Sophia and Nikolai sat in the nursery with all 3 babies finally together in the room they had prepared months earlier. Vivian stood in the doorway, watching silently. "Would you like to hold him?" Sophia asked, extending Alex toward her mother-in-law. As Vivian cradled her grandson, the journey from adversaries to allies felt complete, not through dramatic declarations, but through these small moments of shared purpose and mutual respect. The crisis that had threatened to shatter them had instead become the forge in which a stronger family bond was created, one built on truth, compassion, and the fierce love for 3 small lives who knew nothing of past conflicts, only the warmth of the hands that held them now. 6 months after the triplets came home, a new rhythm governed the Volkov-Chen household. Days began before dawn and moved through carefully orchestrated routines, feeding schedules staggered to allow brief moments of rest, laundry cycles running constantly, sleep measured in precious increments rather than hours. Their spacious home had transformed completely. The pristine living room now featured a circular playmat surrounded by bouncy seats and sensory toys. The kitchen counter held an assembly line of bottles and formula. The once minimalist hallway displayed a row of identical strollers designed for quick deployment. I never imagined we'd need a spreadsheet just to track diaper changes, Nikolai said one morning as he updated the digital log they maintained for each baby. Sophia looked up from where she sat cross-legged on the floor, May on her lap while Elena and Alex practiced tummy time nearby. The researcher in me is actually considering publishing our data. Statistical analysis of triplet care, a 6-month longitudinal study. Complete with sleep deprivation metrics? Nikolai laughed, joining them on the playmat. Exactly, Sophia smiled, watching Alex struggle to lift his head higher than his sister's. Though still smaller, he worked twice as hard, his determination evident in every movement. He reminds me of you, she observed, always pushing himself. Nikolai gently rubbed Alex's back, encouraging his efforts. Elena has your focus. Watch how she studies everything before reaching for it. And May's her own person entirely, Sophia added, as their second daughter rolled from her stomach to her back, a milestone the others hadn't yet achieved. These quiet morning moments, before the day's demands accelerated, had become sacred time, a space to marvel at 3 distinct personalities emerging from the chaos of infant care. Twice weekly, Vivian's car would pull into their driveway precisely at noon, bringing reinforcements just as fatigue threatened to overwhelm them. She arrived not as a visitor requiring attention, but as an experienced caregiver ready to step into the fray. Go take a nap, she would instruct whoever looked most exhausted, or a shower, or both. I've got them for 3 hours. This new version of Vivian, practical, supportive, respectful of boundaries, had emerged gradually during the NICU stay and solidified in the months following. She maintained her apartment nearby but never appeared without texting first. Never criticized their parenting choices, never overstayed. Most remarkably, she had developed unique relationships with each grandchild. With May, she sang Russian lullabies passed down through generations. With Elena, who startled easily, she demonstrated infinite patience, approaching with gentle movements and soft words. With Alex, she employed developmental exercises she'd researched specifically for preemies, celebrating each small advancement. One afternoon, Sophia found Vivian in the nursery, organizing the baby's growing collection of clothes. You don't need to do that, Sophia said, lifting Elena from her crib. I know, Vivian replied simply. I want to... Sophia studied her mother-in-law, noting the silver hair now worn in a practical bob instead of the formal style she'd maintained for decades, the absence of the expensive jewelry she'd once considered essential, the comfortable clothes that allowed her to get down on the floor with the babies. You've changed, Sophia observed. Vivian folded a tiny sweater before responding. Loss changes you. So does joy. I've experienced both in rapid succession. She looked up at Sophia. I'm trying to deserve this second chance. The healing of old wounds happen not through dramatic conversations, but in small, cumulative moments. When Sophia's parents visited from California to meet their grandchildren, Vivian welcomed them warmly, even asking Sophia's mother to teach her the Mandarin lullaby she sang to the triplets. When Elena, Nikolai's sister, not the baby, came for her first visit, visibly nervous about meeting the niece who shared her name, Vivian created space for her to bond with the babies without pressure. The sight of Elena holding her namesake marked a turning point, the family reclaiming and redefining a name that had been associated with pain. Most significantly, when Nikolai received word that his father had accepted a plea deal, acknowledging his crimes while avoiding trial. Vivian sat with him in the garden as he processed complicated emotions about the man who had shaped his childhood. I keep thinking about Alex, Nikolai confessed, referring to his son. How could Dad hurt children when he delivered and treated them professionally for decades? How will I explain to my son someday why he never met his grandfather? With truth, Vivian answered, age-appropriate truth, and by showing him what good men are through your example, these conversations, honest, difficult, necessary, gradually replaced the silences and secrets that had defined their family for generations. As the triplets approached their first birthday, Sophia and Nikolai hosted a small celebration in their backyard, watching Vivian help the babies touch the icing. On their individual cakes, Elena cautiously, May enthusiastically, Alex methodically, Sophia reflected on how thoroughly their definition of family had transformed. Family wasn't defined by shared genetics or cultural background, as Vivian had once insisted, nor was it preserved through silence and loyalty at any cost. Real family was built through choice and courage, the daily decision to face truth together, to support growth in one another, to celebrate differences rather than demanding conformity. The legacy they now created for their children wasn't one of perfect appearances or unbroken traditions, but of authentic connection, resilient love, and the understanding that genuine strength comes not from hiding weakness, but from facing it honestly together. As the afternoon light softened around them, 3 generations moved in a dance of mutual care, imperfect, evolving, beautifully real. Nikolai and Sophia's journey reminds us that family isn't defined by perfection, but by how we respond when that illusion shatters. True healing begins not when wounds are hidden, but when they're acknowledged with courage and compassion. Vivian's transformation shows us that it's never too late to choose a different path. Her willingness to confront painful truths allowed her to discover a new role, not as a gatekeeper of family tradition, but as a supportive presence in her grandchildren's lives. Legacy isn't about maintaining appearances or preserving family names. It lives in the values we demonstrate daily: honesty over pretense, growth over stagnation, and love that makes room for imperfection. The triplets will grow up in a family rebuilt on stronger foundations, where difficult conversations are welcomed, where mistakes become opportunities for growth, and where love is measured by actions rather than obligations. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Family Bonds. If this story touched you, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. How has your own family navigated challenging truths? Subscribe now and activate notifications to catch our next episode, where we'll explore another family facing an impossible choice when a long-buried secret threatens their foundation. Sometimes the greatest act of love is telling the truth, even when it hurts. Until next time, remember that authentic families aren't born, they're built, one brave conversation at a time.